The analysis of the notes with Lucas and Clara from El Comercio from Ecuador.
It's been just a few days in Los Angeles, and, well, you really get it. It's so much more than just Hollywood glamour. Underneath all that, there's this deep, really undeniable Mexican identity just breathes through the city. It really feels like, I don't know, a piece of Mexico that's somehow never quite left. So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly why. Why does Mexican culture feel so dominant in LA? We've got a whole stack of sources here, history, data, personal stories to help us unpack this.
Right, and what's really interesting what this dive shows is it's not just about migration patterns, it's about a living memory. History shaping the present, and as we'll see, even fueling resistance today. Understanding Latinos in LA kind of helps us understand everyone from Latin America. There are connections through food, music, history, language. So exploring California's Mexican culture, it's also about understanding how people put down roots arraigo, we call it, how they build networks, live with that nostalgia, but also create new identities, like the Chicanos.
Yeah, and going through these sources, we definitely had some aha moments.
Yeah.
Things that really clicked and changed how we saw LA. We think you'll find them just as eye-opening, getting you up to speed pretty quickly on this whole connection. Okay, so let's start right at the foundations. Why does LA feel so deeply Mexican? It's more than recent immigration, right? Our sources point to at least three big historical reasons. Where should we begin?
Well, you really have to start with the city's founding, the herencia colonial of the colonial heritage. LA was founded in 1781, and importantly, it wasn't by Americans. It was a small group, part of New Spain. Its original name was quite long, El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles del Río Porciúncula. And we absolutely have to remember indigenous tribes were living on these lands long, long before any colonizers arrived.
That's crucial context. And then comes this really pivotal moment. The territorio cedido, the ceded territory. California wasn't always part of the U.S. It became American territory in 1848, after the U.S.-Mexico War. Just think about that. You had Mexican and indigenous populations already there, and suddenly the border crosses them. They had to figure out where they belonged. That really grounds this identity, historically speaking.
Exactly. And you can still physically see that legacy. Think about Olvera Street. It's the heart of the old pueblo. It still has that traditional Mexican market feel, artisans, food. And actually, our sources mention even that spot has been impacted by some recent events we'll get into later. History isn't static.
Right. It's still playing out.
Yeah.
Okay, so colonial roots, the border shift. What's the third big historical driver?
La migración. Migration itself. California's long border with Mexico is key. Ever since the territory changed hands, there's been this consistent flow of people coming north. And over the years, it really ramped up, driven by the huge demand for labor farms, railroads, factories, service jobs too, plus temporary worker programs.
Okay, so those are the deep historical roots. Now let's talk about today. What does this deep Mexican presence actually look like in LA now, in daily life?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, the demographics are just striking. According to the 2023 Census Survey, LA City has about 3.9 million people. And get this, nearly 47% identify as Hispanic or Latino. That's roughly 1.83 million people.
Almost half the city. That's huge.
It is. And within that group, over 65%, about 1.23 million people, are specifically of Mexican origin. That's from 2021 census data. Of course, the rest of the Latino community is diverse too. People from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, other places. A real mix.
Wow. Okay, 1.2 million people of Mexican origin alone. So what does that mean for the everyday experience? Like, what languages do you actually hear walking around? Our sources look at lo que se escucha, what you hear.
Yeah, it means if you're a Spanish speaker visiting LA, language usually isn't a major hurdle. You can generally get by in Spanish pretty easily. It's the most spoken language right after English.
Really? More than any other language besides English?
By far. The Los Angeles Almanac data, using recent census figures, shows about 43.7% speak only English. But 39%, that's over 1.4 million people, speak Spanish.
39%.
Exactly. And here's another layer. Almost half of those Spanish speakers report having limited English skills. There's this great anecdote in one source. A group of young people, presumably American-born, go up to a taco stand. They can't speak Spanish. The vendors don't quite get their fast, sort of slangy English. And for a moment, the source says, that corner doesn't feel like the U.S. to the English speakers. It's a real snapshot of that linguistic reality.
That taco stand story. Wow, that really paints a picture. And you mentioned something interesting, too, about schools.
Yeah, the source points out that the LA school district offers free English classes for newcomers, which makes sense, but it doesn't offer free Spanish courses, which, given those numbers we just talked about, it's an interesting choice.
It highlights attention, maybe. Like, despite the prevalence of Spanish, the institutional push is still towards English.
It seems that way. It suggests an expectation of assimilation, even in a place that's so profoundly bilingual. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Absolutely. And it's not just the sounds of the city. Spanish is literally written on the map. Lo que se lee, what you read. The source talks about streets, plazas, beaches. The place names themselves constantly echo those Latin roots, that Hispanic memory.
Oh, completely. So many street and neighborhood names date back to the 19th century, before California was part of the U.S. Some are named for old political figures, think Alvarado, Los Feliz, Figueroa. Others come directly from the names of old Spanish or Mexican ranchos.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Sure, names you hear all the time. Santa Monica, San Pedro, El Sereno, El Segundo, Cerritos, Mariachi Plaza, obviously, Sepulveda Boulevard, La Brea. But the source makes a good point. A lot of residents today, they don't actually know the history behind those names, or sometimes even how to pronounce them without what the source calls an American accent. It reinforces that language dynamic again.
Okay, let's shift gears to something everyone loves. Food. Lo que se come. What we eat. Our source flat out declares tacos are the food of Los Angeles. Some locals even say they're the best in the world. Bold.
It is a bold claim. But, you experience the street food scene there, and you start to understand why people feel that way. Starting mid-afternoon, 3 or 4 p.m., vendors are setting up grills. You smell the child's onions, the al pastor meat cooking. And crucially, most stay open late, till midnight or even later. That's a big deal in a city where lots of places can shut down by 10 p.m.
That late-night availability is the key. Any specific examples?
Yeah, the source mentions Angel's Tijuana Tacos on Sunset and Everett. Apparently, there's always a line. Their menu sounds classic. Tacos for $3.25, burritos, $12, tortas, quesadillas, nachos, even loaded potatoes, and all the essential meat choices. Pastor, asada, birria, chorizo, cabeza, buche, mouth-watering stuff.
Just hearing those prices.
Yeah.
$3.25 for a taco. And the source notes people ordering in Spanish or Spanglish, all looking for those flavors that, as it says, remind them of their homes thousands of kilometers away.
Exactly. That connection through food is powerful.
And the scale of Mexican food in LA is just massive. Under La Comida Mexicana on Cifras, the numbers. Over 5,400 Mexican restaurants and food trucks, loncheras, in LA County alone. That's from a 2024 Pew mapping.
And that doesn't even count all the informal street stalls, the grills we were just talking about.
Right. And think about this. Across the entire U.S., 1 out of every 10 restaurants serves Mexican food. It's huge.
And this brings up that price difference again. A taco in a formal restaurant might be $5, maybe up to $10. But at that street stall, $3, maybe a bit more.
So the source asks a really pointed question.
Yeah. Does formality and its bureaucracy increase the price of a taco to the detriment of flavor?
And the conclusion drawn in the source.
Pretty blunt. In Los Angeles, I've proven that it does, suggesting those street tacos often have the edge in taste and price.
Okay, so this vibrant culture, the food scene,
Yeah.
it's not just about enjoyment. It connects to deeper themes, identity, even resistance. This is under lo que hay que recordar, what we need to remember. The source says recently, just this past June and July, tacos actually became a symbol of cultural resistance, solidarity. Why? Because migrant raids were hitting street vendors hard.
That's the context. Videos were circulating of pretty forceful arrests, plus pronouncements from the Trump administration. It created this atmosphere where, according to the source, many people felt afraid to go out, like they were being hunted. The source uses that phrase and includes testimonies talking about hunt by skin color. It's very direct.
Are there specific stories shared?
Yes, really powerful ones. They're presented as direct testimonies in the source material. Elzon Lemus, detained by IC June 3rd, 2025 in New York, is quoted saying, "For being a man of color and Hispanic, they made me feel like a criminal." Andrea Velez, picked up in downtown LA on June 24th. "I'm Latina. I'm sure I was racially profiled." She said agents just dragged her into a car, no ID check first. And Adrian Martinez, detained June 17th. He said, "I told them I was a citizen. They knew, but they wanted me to prove it." He showed his license indicating citizenship. He added it was hard to prove it otherwise. And then his employer, Walmart, fired him the next day. These accounts really illustrate the fear.
Those are chilling stories. And you mentioned a symbol seen in protests against this, the Mexican flag.
Yes, the source notes the Mexican flag was very visible in photos from recent LA protests, often carried by Chicanos.
Okay, so let's clarify. Who exactly are Chicanos?
Chicanos are, generally speaking, people born in the U.S. whose parents are from Mexico. So they have Latin American roots, Mexican heritage, but a U.S. passport. Their identity has really been shaped by defending that heritage, especially since the Chicano movement in the 1960s. They often navigate this feeling of ni de aquí ni de allá, neither from here nor from there, because historically they've faced discrimination sometimes in the U.S., but also sometimes felt like outsiders if they visited Mexico. It's a unique, complex identity.
Forged in that in-between space. And despite this really difficult, tense environment described in the sources, people have to keep working. How do they cope? How do they resist?
Well, the sources show incredible resilience. They form support networks, community groups, social collectives, even online influencers have organized to help the street vendor community. They're pushing back against what they see as a hostile climate, defending their identity, their culture, their skin and accent, as the source puts it.
A powerful reminder of community strength. So we've really journeyed through LA's Mexican identity from its deep historical roots.
Right, the colonial founding, the ceded territory, the ongoing migration.
To how it shapes the city today. The demographics, the language you hear, the names on the streets.
And of course the food. Can't forget the tacos.
Absolutely. It's clear LA isn't just a city with Mexicans. It's a city where Mexican identity is fundamentally woven into its very being.
And looking at the Mexican experience in LA, it really does give us a window into that larger story of migrants everywhere, how they create new lives, build new identities, how that process of putting down roots that arraigo is so complex, sometimes beautiful, sometimes defiant, always human.
So as we wrap up, maybe something to think about. What does belonging really mean when your roots cross borders like that? When your identity is shaped in that tough, resilient space of being maybe ni de aquí ni de allá? What part of this deep dive stood out most to you?
Comment, subscribe and share. More information at www.commerce.com.